Hey everybody, thought we'd take a look at the last stand. I've got it all set up and ready to roll. I've got a little rules summary here to sort of help me walk through bits and pieces. Got all the bits on the board, so we're good to go. A few interesting things. So when I first did the shrink grip, I mentioned to you that it was a relatively straightforward, standard East Front war game with the how do you move, how do you shoot, how do you stay in supply type of structure. And there are many things about this that are very plain and simple and generic, which is fine. But there are a cool handful of nuances that I thought might be worth touching on, and we'll learn more about them as we play the game. But I thought it'd be fun to just sort of have a little talk about them in the first instance before I start moving pieces and rolling dice. So, a couple of things: overruns and the Katyusha, whatever they are, the Katy rocket launches use a D10 for the combat results, and we use a D6 for regular combat. So that's pretty nifty. The Katys, they're a one-time use thing. There are obviously more of them that come on during the game, but you get them, you use them, they're gone. They're not a unit with a Zoc or anything like that. They're basically an add-on. They're a physical attack that occurs, and they're pretty nasty. No matter what terrain it is, what weather it is, it's a 4-to-1 attack in the open, and that's how it's treated. So they're going to be pretty deadly. I think there will be losses taken. So that's kind of interesting. The air war is pretty straightforward. It's just a column shift, and those air factors start out very heavily in favor of the Germans, and then of course over time, as we move from October into November, it kind of evens out, and then it goes back, sort of favors the Soviets during late December. And then if you go into the extended version of the game, play turns 11 and 12, then it sort of evens out again. And here's where this game is a little bit different. There are these garrison forces here. They're 0-1-0, so you can't move them and have a defensive 1. Every time one of those is eliminated, we're going to move a chit on a track. And this chit here has a number on the back of it. And I'm not going to look at it right now because we're getting ready to start the game. But that number, I think, runs from as low as 14 or 15 and as high as 19. Let me look at some of the other ones that are here. Yeah, there's a 14 here. And I think the highest one is 19. I think. Yes, it is. The highest one is 19. And what happens is, as these are eliminated, and I believe also when factories are eliminated as well, and I have to double check that, we're going to move a morale marker, which I can't seem to find at the moment, move the morale marker up this Soviet damage track. And once we get to 13 on the damage track, that's going to allow the German player to look at what that number is on this chit. And that's going to drive some behavior then. It's potentially, Soviets obviously want to keep the number low. The Germans want to try and get the number high so they can see what the chit number is. And once you know what the chit number is, that's going to be kind of your trigger for strategic victory. If you can get to on this damage track over here, and let me just unplug the phone. I've got it in the power source here because it's been playing up lately. Probably time for a new device. Got this track over here. Let's zoom in a little bit. And I've got it on here 13 because once you get to 13, that's when I can look at it. But I can't find the counter for that. So we're going to start here, right, on 0. I don't know why it doesn't start on 0 either. But anyway, you run up on this track. You get to this point. You're allowed to see this. And then let's say it was 14. Let's say this number is 14. If this then moved to here and I knew it was 14, I would then tell the Soviet player, hey, bad news, dude. you lose. So at least that's how I'm reading at the moment. Now, if you capture Tula, there's a factory in Tula, and if you capture Moscow, there's a factory in Moscow. That's going to offer up a sort of transient damage counter. And it'll go on the track in addition to wherever you may be. And if that number is below 9 or below, they're going to come off at the end of the turn. And you get these damage markers for doing various things, either making an attack that causes a loss in Moscow, and I think in Tula. But that will, and I just read the rules this morning, so I'm talking to you sort of fresh here. I haven't played it, so I don't know exactly how it works. These will come off depending on where you are on this track. So this is kind of interesting. This is going to drive, I think it's going to drive behavior. It's going to force the Soviets to potentially make really crappy counterattacks to try and recapture some of these locations potentially, because that's going to affect, if you recapture the location, you will, obviously enough, you will reduce the track over there and keep it away from the 13, or keep it down from wherever, what that potential number could be, because it could be anywhere from 14 to 19. And if it's a 19, that's bad for the Germans because they've got to capture a lot of locations, right? So there's a mechanism in here that you can force the Soviets to pull another chip, or actually the German pulls the chip at his option, and he might get a number below 19, and it might be 14. And if you're at 15, boom, you win. Game over. So it's an interesting kind of drop dead sort of thing that goes on. You've got the classic untried counters here that you're very familiar with from a lot of S&T games, SBI games. They can go straight back into this replacement bucket that's over on the right-hand side of the map. And they come back on based on a variety of factors, but there's a certain number that can come back every turn depending on the type. There's supply in this, and there's isolation in this, and it's if you're out of supply, it's halving your supply your movement in combat and defense, and quartered if you're isolated. You've got these headquarter units for the Germans that you get a certain number per turn, and that's going to give you the what am I trying to say here? This is going to give you a bonus on combat. So I will move this thing, flip it at the end of its movement, and any unit or 2 units within 4 hexes of this can take advantage of the headquarter supply. I then pick this up, move it off, and I get 2 column shifts to the right. Bada boom, bada bing. All right. So this is going to allow you to focus your supply line, probably where your Schwerpunkt is, or your main effort in the combat is going to be. And as you can see, there's lots and lots of these, but starting turn 1, like for turn 1, I get 5 of them, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 2, then 1, and then none and none and 1 and 1. So it's a beatdown for the Germans. You're going to make big gains early. We're going to have to drive the line here. Try and get in amongst this fortification action, hit Moscow, get the bonus points is what I'm guessing, the bonus damage markers, these damage morale markers, right? Morale damage markers, I should say. And try and force the capitulation versus trying to clean everything off the board and kill everything. Now, you can still make normal attacks, and goodness me, there's a lot of units here that have very, very weak defensive capabilities, so we can still make normal attacks and try and clean up these units. But I think one of the things with this sort of constant flow of replacements and whatnot, with these untried units, is sometimes it's better to leave, I think it's the Germans, it's better to leave the bad guys in an awkward position, out of position, than to have fresh bad guys coming back onto the map on the eastern edge and then reinforcing the whole Moscow defensive line. That's kind of my thinking, or how I've seen this play out before. It's kind of like you're playing Russian campaign, right? You'll wipe out all the Soviets in the first turn, and there's like a handful of little buggers left, and then 2 turns later, boom, whoop, there it is, and all the Soviets re-enter the map with all those divisions. So might be smarter for us to game the system a little bit, maybe try and force a pocket here. Who knows? We'll we'll get into it in just a few minutes actually, and we'll see. But they were a couple of little systems that I thought were quite neat. I'm just trying to think of anything else. Lots of summary stuff on the map and the charts here that explain all the rules, so you don't really have to get back into this bad boy, which is not. It's very well laid out and all the rest of it. Pretty much everything's out here, or it's on a summary chart, which is on the back of the CRT. I've just put these both under the Plex because they're here, which actually means I'm going to have to look at the CRT upside down unless I slide it out. Anyway, we'll sort that out. All right, I think that was the main stuff that I thought was a little bit different and innovative. Obviously there's either 2-step or 3-step units here based on we'll talk about that later on when we actually get into some combats. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Catch you soon. The Last Stand, Battle for Moscow, 1941, 1942 from MMP. Cheers. Stop the camera, hey?